For those that don't already know you, Gary, can you explain who you are and what you do?
Certainly, I'm Gary Comerford. I run the EV Musings Podcast, which is a podcast about renewables, electric vehicles, and things that are interesting to electric vehicle owners.
Very good. Thanks for covering Northern Ireland previously for us on your podcast. Can you give us some insight on what's coming up in the future episodes and seasons?
We're about halfway through the current season, 20 episodes, and I have plans to do an episode on EV insurance, so how that's changed over the last few years, what's causing the prices to go up. I'm talking with a couple of people about living with an EV in America, what the difference is between the American market and the UK market. Also, I've got an interview in the can already about Australia.
Oh, very good.
And I also have the roundtable, which I have at the end of every season, where I get 3 or 4 industry luminaries in, and we talk about any number of different topics, put the world to rights, and then move on to whatever the next subject is.
Fantastic. Sounds really interesting. In regard to the last 2 years, there's been a big change in Northern Ireland in the last 2 years. As you may know, you went from 19 rapid chargers to 150 today. So things are progressing. But what's your view on the industry? What has happened in the last 2 years?
I think what you've just said there about the growth in the number of chargers, that to me is the key thing, because we go back to, you go back 5 years, 6 years to when I first started driving electric, and 100 miles on a range, you might just make it to the next charger. And then you look at the last 18 months, and we've had like a 43% increase. In the last 12 months, we're going to have another 43% increase in the number of chargers that have been installed. As you said yourself, that's kind of been replicated over in Northern Ireland. So the number of times I hear on social media, oh, well, the infrastructure's not there. Well, it is. Yes, there are still some charging wastelands. There are still some areas where it's a little bit thin on the ground. But if you compare where we are now with where we were even 12 months ago, the difference is phenomenal.
Absolutely agree with that. It's the same in Northern Ireland. That's why our focus in EV&I is slightly shifting from the charging. It's not over. We've got still a ways to catch up. But some of the other areas that we're targeting would be people without off-street parking who can't avail of home charging. That's one of our challenges, and the other one is disinformation and misinformation that's going on. Is there anything there that you want to speak about?
Well, I did an episode a couple of weeks ago for people who live in apartments. So of course you've got, especially in the UK, you've got a number of apartment blocks with 20, 30, 40 different apartments. And if you have an electric vehicle in that, unless you're on like the ground floor or something, you can't really feed a cable out and charge your vehicle. But there are a number of options available now, and I spoke to a company called Charge Guru, and they have an offering where they will install chargers for you and manage it and allow you to use a domestic electric tariff rather than a public charging tariff for a subscription of like £5 a month. Now, there are criteria around that. You've got to have a minimum of 30 apartments, and you have to have underground parking.
Okay.
So it's not going to cover everything, but it's a start. And we've also got things like Charge and Gully, which are the in-pavement ones. So for a lot of the places like Oxford, Nottinghamshire, London, that's an excellent way of providing charging for people who don't have off-street parking. And then we get onto the whole area of misinformation, which half the time I think that my podcast is there to try and dispel a lot of this information. And it's a bit like the boy with his finger in the dike. It's going to happen. There's all this misinformation coming through, and we've just spoken here today with Dan Caesar, who's talked about some of the initiatives that they're taking with the electric.
Combat it, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and it's frightening because the level of misinformation that's out there, I think, is affecting the uptake of EVs.
Absolutely.
And yes, EVs aren't perfect, and as the people FullyCharged here have said, if we take every internal combustion engine car and replace it with an electric vehicle, we've probably failed. We need to cut down the number of vehicles on the road. We need to increase active travel, bikes and things like that. But even that is at risk if the people go out and spread the blatant lies that a lot of them are there. But we've also got to make sure that, yes, there are lies, but there's also people who are misinformed.
Yes.
And I'm more focused on the people who are misinformed. They think this is the situation, but that's not the situation, so we can talk about that, versus those who know that this isn't the situation, but they'll lie about it anyway.
Super. We would encourage our members to listen to your podcast and hear that and spread. As you say, it's not necessarily the EV drivers that are hearing this, or will they hear the misinformation, but they're not actually swayed by it. It's the people who haven't tried an electric vehicle. They hear this misinformation, and suddenly it's truth to them without actually understanding. So people experiencing electric vehicles is what we're trying to do. So, and fight against the misinformation there, and try and put a lived experience message out there. So 100%. Thanks very much for the quick chat.
You're welcome, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys for an upcoming episode, probably next season, on the advances that you've made in Northern Ireland.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it, Gary. Thanks very much.
Cheers.